the Late Kick Extra podcast, is the spillover. It's the reservoir. It's where all of your questions go that we can't get to on the actual show. We release it every Wednesday. Tani does a great job with that and gets it out pretty quickly because I do that thing late Tuesday night. And it's really fun, really free-flowing, but sometimes I'll come across questions like this one, and I'll say, I could answer that on the podcast, but why don't I just take that over to our next show? And so Chris and Rod both submitted a version of the same question. And the question was essentially, what are either the best or the most hostile environments, college football environments, that you have ever personally witnessed? Caveat, really the one and only caveat here, I haven't been to every stadium. I haven't covered games in every stadium. So there are going to be some venues. For example, Penn State whiteout. Never been able to witness it. Never been able to experience it. I can definitively tell you, had I experienced it, that would be on the list. As far as I can tell on TV, looks like it would be on the list. But let me tell you, just from what I personally have either been in the crowd or on the field to witness, by a significant margin, Alabama going to LSU is the craziest scene that I've experienced in college football. And I've done it several times now. I've been down there several times. It's like you have walked onto a different planet. The passion, the intensity, which doesn't border on rabid, it well exceeds what you would call rabid. People just frothing at the mouth. The palpable energy of hatred and venom. It's really a beautiful thing if they're not directing it at you. But let me tell you what stands out the most. I remember the first time that I went down there for a Bama LSU game. It was a night game. And I will never forget walking from the media parking lot just through the tailgates and walking into the stadium. I had a young lady with me at the time who worked at the station. And there was nothing that happened to us, but that's the whole point. No one needed to do anything. It just felt so unsafe. This is certainly a compliment. I've said this many times. LSU folks who watch the show, they've heard me say this before. It made you feel so uneasy. And we were in neutral colors. We were wearing station polos. So we were in no real danger, but you were so uncomfortable. I did not feel safe, really, and it wasn't me. I was worried about her. You understand how it is. But you didn't really feel safe until you got through the media gate and into that empty stadium. So I'm thinking to myself, if that's what I felt like, and none of these people care about me, if that's what I felt like, what do rival fans feel like? What does the rival team feel like? And I was there when Bama's buses pulled in, rocking back and forth. Oh, some of you need to atone for some of the things I heard come out of your mouth that day, by the way. But, oh my goodness, when they took the field for the first time defensively, and you're standing at field level, and you hear that place get full throat loud for the first time, it's like standing, I can imagine it's like standing on a tarmac at Hartsfield International Airport, where jets are all around you, but you don't get to wear those earmuffs that the guys who drive the little buggies around get to wear. I was standing next to someone. I could have yelled as loud as I wanted to at that person. That's all they would have seen. That sounded like great radio or a podcast for those of you listening to the audio version. So Alabama at LSU, hostility like you would not believe. I'll tell you another place, probably underrated from a national perspective. They get their proper credit regionally, and that's Auburn. And I want to talk specifically about Georgia at Auburn, let's say 2017. But you could pick a number of games. You could pick the Iron Bowl from this same year that happened 2 weeks later. But I was at both of those games. This is, I don't know how to describe it to you. A lot of people down here haven't figured it out. But everyone will swear to you there's something that happens, not every year, but there's something that happens around Auburn football in these certain years. Usually it's the odd number years where Georgia and Bama both have to go in there. If they start to build some kind of momentum, 2013 is a good example, 2017 was a great example. If they start to build some kind of momentum, it almost seems like there's this sort of voodoo. Can't describe it any other way, but here's the bad side. When Auburn fans realize it, they latch onto it. 2013, you remember how that season went. 2013, you have the tip pass at the Prairie Jordan Hare, and then a couple weeks later, the kick six. Those things are multi-generational occurrences that happened within the same 3-week span, okay? And then you fast forward to 2017. Number 1 Georgia comes in there, blowout. Number 1 Alabama comes in there, taken down. This a month after everyone wanted Malzahn fired. And there's this feeling like I've never experienced in any other venue, including LSU. Like I told you, I was there for Alabama at LSU. It's the most hostile place I've ever witnessed, but Alabama won the game. Alabama's won every game that I've attended down there. These teams are coming into Jordan-Hare Stadium, and I swear to you, you can't quantify it. It just feels like the actual venue has an effect on the final score. Don't know what that means, don't know how to describe it. It's like if you ever think that you saw a ghost and you try and explain it to people, like me, who don't believe in ghosts. How do you explain it? You know what you believe, you know what you think you saw, just like I think I know a lot of things I've witnessed happen at Jordan-Hare Stadium, like in 2017 or 2013 against Georgia, against Alabama. I don't think those things would happen if they played those games in a sandlot. But yet they don't play them in a sandlot. They played them there. And it's just crazy, crazy stuff. And you look to your left and look to your right, and like everyone's just kind of shaking their head and smiling. And it's like this understood joke of, there it goes again. JHS, there it goes again. Now, let me give you one from very recent history. This is last year. Same two teams we talked about a second ago. Let's just change the venue. LSU at Alabama. There's a funny thing about Alabama, too, Bryant-Denny Stadium. Bryant-Denny Stadium has a little bit different reputation. You think about Bryant-Denny Stadium, if you've been there in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, and you've been to these other venues like I have, you probably think, oh, that place, it's not quite as loud, it's not quite as intimidating as some of these other venues, and most of the time you're right. It's not because it's not as big. They got 100,000 in there. It's not because those folks aren't as passionate, but they keep winning, and they've been winning for a long time. And really, you don't get to hear a stadium truly at full throat unless they're angry or unless they're threatened. So it stands to reason Alabama home games do not really include a stadium full of folks who feel threatened very often, with the exception of last year. LSU at Alabama, they felt threatened. Whether they wanted to admit it or not, they felt threatened even going into the game. So last year, we were on the field for this one too. Last year, Bryant-Denny Stadium sounded about as intense and had about as loud a sustained roar for 4 quarters as I've heard up there in a long time. They've had some games against Tennessee that have been kind of weird because they've been heavily favored, but they've had some games against Tennessee that rivaled it. But this was a true big game atmosphere. And boy, I mean, even though they were down, that was the other weird thing. They were down pretty much the entire game. Well, the entire game. That was an incredible, incredible atmosphere. Think about this. I had a buddy that was able to go to the game with me, and that was the first one he had ever been to up there, which is really funny because, I mean, I can't tell you how many I've been to up there at all these venues, really. I'm very fortunate to be able to say that. But, I mean, that being your first impression of any place, that place or any place, he still talks about it to this day. For that reason and some other reasons that I can't talk about. Statute of limitations on the second part there. And the other one, Colin, I don't even know if I told you this one, but the other one was Clemson at FSU. Just run through this one real quick. This was 2016. It's the only time I've ever been able to go to Doak Campbell Stadium. This was when Deshaun Watson they were on their way to winning the national championship that year. And there were a lot of folks who were questioning them that year of, you know, we see them, but we think they may be a paper tiger. They haven't been tested on the road yet. And so they went on the road, very competitive game. I think it was a field goal final. But that's the time that I've been able to go to a Florida State game and really see that place as close to vintage Doak Campbell Stadium as I would have ever been able to experience. And they do a great job at giving zero comfort factor to the road team, which is common in college football, but it just, there aren't a lot of frills, there aren't a lot of bells and whistles. It's not, like I've said before, it's not this sparkling, immaculate, brand new facility. It's a place that's got a little age on it, and it's not all that easy to get into. And, you know, the corridors are very narrow, especially for the visiting team. That's great. I love that because that is part of what true home field advantage is. So those, to me, are the most hostile environments I've been in. Now, I don't do these calls to action all the time, but on this particular video, or if you're watching the entire show, I'll be very interested to look in the comment section because a lot of you have been to a lot of different places, and I want to know some of the most hostile environments you remember. Give me the stadium, give me the game, and then I'll try and see if I remember how it went.